up, you guys? This is Rob from the Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Snapshot, Red Tech said it himself, it's time for a good fisting when we take a look at the Kogake Prime. Now, as with all Prime weapons, I'm going to go ahead and leave the links to their drop locations and relics down in the description box below, because y'all know I am not responsible with this bullshit, and I don't really want to keep on top of it, if I'm going to be completely frank with you. However, if you are going to craft it, be aware that it does require Mastery Rank 10 if you're going to do so. However, if you want to skip all of that, you can always pick it up while it's available in Mirage Prime Access. Now, the Kogake Prime is a set of impact-based sparring weapons with some very interesting tweaks from its non-prime variant. While the set does offer 4% less critical chance and 0.2 less critical multiplier, its base damage is actually doubled, which currently gives it the highest base damage of all sparring weapons. And whilst its critical chance and critical multiplier are still decent enough to build for, where it really shines is its chart-topping 34% status chance. Combine that with many of the sparring stances offering up flurries of multi-hit combos, and condition overload sends this thing's efficacy through the roof. Okay, so before we jump into the build, I do need to make note of this. Just like the Akbolto Prime, this thing has a shit ton of polarities. It's 3 Vs. You literally don't need to put a forma in this if you don't want to. There's one instance, but we'll chat about that in a second. So as you can see from the build here, it's pretty basic. We're doing a lot of status, and we've actually got Blood Rush and Organ Shatter in it. We do need to make sure, of course, we have the star of the show, which is Condition Overload, in there as well. I want to make note of one slot here, which is going to be the Organ Shatter. I played around a lot, mainly because of the fact that I'm like, it's got a 1.8 multiplier. Do we really want to put Organ Shatter in there, or can we do something like another status elemental mod? And I'm going to be completely honest with you, I've been able to replace Organ Shatter with Weeping Wounds. I've been able to replace it with the Fire Status Elemental mod. I've been able to replace it with another 90% Elemental mod. And to be completely frank, they all kind of perform the same. Like, they've all been within like the 30s and 40s on a kill on a, on a 150 Bombard. So I'm kind of like, really do what you feel like with this last slot. And because I read your comments on the last video, I was paying attention. Don't think that I don't listen to y'all, because I listen to you guys. But legitimately in the last video, this you did give me a heads up on, remember, more dots better when it comes to ribbon disposition, and this thing has 5 dots. So put a ribbon in here, that would be fantastic. That's probably where you would need to put in another forma, or, and this is what I was tempted to do, and I might just put another forma in it just because literally it's the only place I can use it in, is Prime Fever Strike. Why fucking not, right? But let's go ahead and take a look how this performs with this current build. Alright, so one of the things that I did not mention, because I don't know how to measure this, I don't know if this is true, but supposedly when you have this equipped, you get 5% more movement speed. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know whether to tell it's true. There's, there's no blurb in it in the, there's no blurb in it, by the way, that's 25 hits, that's pretty fucking good. There's no blurb in it in the actual, like, Prime, like, release. They didn't say anything about it having a 5% movement increase. I looked in the stats window of the Warframe itself, don't fall off the edge, and legitimately, there was nothing in there about that either. I keep missing all of the down shots, but as you can see, when those knockdowns happen, that's really where you do a shit ton of the damage. Like, as they're trying to get up, because I believe there's something that occurs, and I don't necessarily want to get too deep into it because I don't want anything to get nerfed. But there's something that occurs when an enemy gets knocked down and they're trying to get up. And you smack them a bunch of times because you end up dealing a lot of damage during those times. And that's what makes Brutal Tide very, very good as a combo for these big single target brutes. But anyway, back to the 5% movement speed. I have absolutely no clue how to measure it. I've swapped, what is it called? I've swapped weapons in the middle of a run, and it really doesn't feel that different. It's 5%. So it's going to be hard to tell whether it's, even, it's just going to be hard to tell no matter what. Like, I just didn't feel movement speed increase. Anyway, so you've seen how this performs basically with Organ Shatter. While we're at it, let's go ahead and put on a Fire Elemental mod. just so that you guys can kind of see how it performs with the focus being on status. One of the things that I kind of wanted to kind of highlight with this, I guess I would say, is mainly the fact that right now I understand that there are going to be other fist weapons that are competitive with this. Like if you think about the Haruto and whatnot, that's an incredible fist weapon. However, one of the things that, you know, we do kind of need to make note of is the fact that I'm missing every single combo. But is the fact that we are going to be undergoing some status changes at some point where, you know, going past 100% status is actually going to give us some benefits. So having a high status fist weapon that in all honesty is still crit viable is not necessarily a bad thing to have. I understand that people are always going to be comparing things to, you know, what is meta, and I'm gonna be honest, I feel like if this is comparable, you might not get the life leech that you do with the Haruto, but with so many of the things with the operators that we have now, it's almost kind of negligible, if I'm gonna be completely honest with you. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are gonna be coming up in the future that this might benefit a ton from, especially when we're talking the status changes. I mean, with as much impact as this thing has, this might end up downing enemies for extremely long periods of time. So that's kind of one of the things to pay attention to, is the fact that it's good now. And I want to even say that it's comparable now. It's comparable. I think it's definitely comparable. But in the future, this could end up turning into something that is absolutely beastly. And as you can see, one of the things I do want to point out with both builds is they both have like odd consistencies. I feel like the fire one is almost a little bit more consistent than the Organ Shatter one, but they're both getting the kills in a very, very similar amount of time. Nothing that I would actually, you know, go too crazy over. Oh, the Organ Shatter one almost is more tempting for star chart stuff, mainly because of the fact that you get more of the upfront damage as opposed to the Fire Elemental, which kind of like, you know, it requires you to get a couple more hits, tag them with a couple extra elementals. You know, there's flexibility in the builds there, so that's definitely something to keep in mind when it comes to the Kogake Prime. So all in all, the Kogake Prime are actually pretty fucking good, with the potential of being absolutely amazing when Status 2.0 comes about. Now I do want to point out something, that these are the first within their category to get Prime, so if you're looking for some Orokin sexiness on your fingers, if you're looking something gilded and gorgeous on your feet, these are definitely going to be the things that you want to go to. I also want to kind of make note of the fact that comparisons are going to happen. It's absolutely unavoidable, and I know that people are going to ask the question, well, why would I use a sparring weapon over something with a little bit more range that does as much, if not more damage, kind of like the Galatine Prime, maybe like the Atarax, or even some of the new really, really powerful Zaws out there? And my only real response to that, because it's gonna happen, it's out there, is sometimes you get tired of playing the meta. Sometimes you get tired of playing with the exact same set of weapons over and over and over again, and for someone who's been with this game for a long ass time, a founder, like, listen, I'm just lucky I don't have any gray hairs by now, but I'm due, especially when it comes to this game. Sometimes you just kind of want to mix things up, and burnout happens, and burnout tends to happen to the people who play the same thing over and over and over again. So it's nice to kind of break up some of that monotony with toys like the Kogake, right? So it's a welcome addition in my books, at least those are my own personal feelings. But that about does it for the facts and figures. If y'all want to chat a little bit about, you know, the potential future of Status, go ahead and join me for the gameplay, which is coming up next. Alright, so I'm gonna say this now because I can already feel it happening in the comments. I can already feel it happening in the comment section, okay? We need to put an end to this. Rob, I can't believe you like Status now. Bitch, please. Legitimately, I said that I did not like Status when Status was shitty, and Status was shitty back in then. And I also told you that I would let you know when Status was good. And guess what? Status is getting good now, alright? Back in the day, we didn't have shit like Condition Overload. We didn't have things like the Status Elemental mods. We didn't have weapons that could really, really take advantage of Status. So before y'all start talking about Status and my original hate for it, and you know what, Status doesn't necessarily belong on everything, but I'm just saying, that as of late, DE's made many variants when it comes to weapons, and that's kind of like what ended up happening, is that DE at some point had to make a good status weapon. That's just kind of like what it came to, because we had a lot of crit weapons for that time. We had a lot of weapons with high base damage or like elemental stuff built in, and you know, back in the day, it was like, it was cool. I was like, oh, that's exciting, that's amazing, you know what I mean? We have all of these weapons, and then, you know, status was just kind of like meh. They didn't necessarily know how to make the best use of it, and now kind of like after a while, you kind of have to get good at it. I mean, you either get good or you get good, or you just keep sucking for the rest of your life. And unfortunately, well, no, fortunately, DE has like pulled their shit together when it came to the status, and I mean, they've been doing that for a while now. You know what I mean? That's kind of like how it goes. It's along the lines of like what happened with crit back in the day. Because, listen, we didn't always have crit weapons, and we didn't always have crit builds and all of that kind of stuff. Legitimately, I remember the days when we had the Soma, and the first time that the Soma came through, and we're looking at it, we're like, this thing has like a really low base damage. Then all of a sudden we put crit mods on it, and we're like, oh my god, this is how this is supposed to work. And that's kind of like the same way that things have slowly kind of been turning for status weapons, is they've been able to perfect it. Now, of course, we have the new proposition of the fact that, oh shit, you know, they might be boosting up the efficacy of status weapons. And, well, not status weapons, but status, you know, letting it go beyond that 100%. Because for those of you guys who don't know, like, at 100% status, any more status beyond that does not really do anything. So it's pointless to go beyond, kind of like Weeping Wounds. Once you're done, you're done. You know what I mean? It's like Weeping Wounds is like in there, you're like, yeah, well, you don't really need any more because you're already done with it, right? However, with the potentiality of what they're proposing for you know, they call it damage 3.0, but really it's like status 2.0. With status 2.0 coming out, it's kind of like it kind of like changes things, because now, you know, we're gonna have weapons like the Kogake Prime, which I'm really excited about seeing what'll happen to it afterwards. Because one of their propositions for impact damage is that impact damage will be able to, you know, cause, you know, different levels of stagger, but one of the levels of stagger would actually be a knockdown. And I'm almost kind of like hoping for like a knockout. You know what I mean? Kind of like the ability to basically knock an enemy flat on their ass and have them be disoriented for a while and being on the ground. Because as you guys saw, you know, the ground finishers are extremely powerful for this weapon. So being able to rack up a bunch of those hits can make, you know, this sparring weapon really powerful, because of the fact that its ground finishers are these explosions. Well, not explosions. These what is my brain saying? Like a bunch of fists. This flurry of fist pounds. So part of me is really excited to see, you know, what could end up happening with that, and maybe, and that's the biggest thing, right? It's these little changes. Well, I guess you can't really call it a little change, but it's changes. It's like one change can affect the entire rest of the game, and you know, that's why DE kind of does try to take their time with some of these bigger changes, because legitimately, it's like one thing, just kind of like how condition overload made status something that you wanted to build for because of the multiplier attached to it. You're like, holy shit, that's absolutely insane. And that's kind of like the way that, you know, this is going to be, the Kogake is going to end up coming into its own potentially in the future. Because we do have things like the Haruto, and, you know, don't think that I'm not aware of it. Of course, that thing has like a decent amount of crit, a really high critical multiplier, a cool effect on it, but it has like very little status, which, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad weapon, but it's gonna make things different, you know, for people who want to use the Kogake versus the people who want to use the Haruto. And the thing about it is, both of them are, you know, crit build viable. One more so than the other because of the higher critical multiplier. But the thing about this one is this is going to have a lot more crit built in, or a lot more status built into it, which means that, you know, in that one spot I was talking about a little bit earlier, where I was saying, oh yeah, you know, you can put whatever you want into it, you might be able to toss in a Weeping Wounds and just knock enemies flat on their ass and leave them there for a while, you know? So that's one of the big things that it's going to make it different, because with, you know, the Haruto, you don't necessarily want to build status, or it's not as rewarding to build status. And if we've got Condition Overload mixed with the new potential status 2.0 or whatever the hell we want to call it, it's gonna be pretty goddamn interesting. You know, the differences between the two are gonna kind of like diverge even further than they kind of are now. So that's definitely something exciting that I want to see in the future, because whenever DE does something, it's like this massive ripple effect, and that's why I always kind of laugh, to be honest, when people get really like, oh, you should just do this, you should just make this one change and it's gonna make everything better. And I'm like, you don't understand, when like they make one change, it affects one thing, which affects a certain type of mod, which affects a certain type of weapon, and then that of course is gonna affect certain types of builds that are done with certain types of warframes. So like one thing can affect the entire game in so many ways, shapes, and forms. So that's kind of why I'm really excited to see, you know, what could happen with status 2.0 and the way that it affects weapons like the Kogake Prime, which have a shit ton of status. Because before, shit ton of status didn't really mean too much, but now if you can get past the 100% mark, what does that mean for a weapon with really high status chance, you know? So those are kind of like my thoughts on it. I know that there are a lot of other fears that go along with it, like some people are uncomfortable with some of the changes to our favorite status, which would be Slash, and I know that there's going to be some butthurt people, but you know what? As like I was saying, I hope DE takes their time, you know, with it, and kind of plays around with numbers and sees exactly where things should sit and whatnot, because, you know, we might fuck over one weapon type, but we might also raise up a bunch of other weapon types. So, you know, I'm crossing my fingers that it's all good in the future. Weapons like the Kogake Prime can shine, and other weapons out there as well. But that's all the words that are from my mouth that are pouring now, because grammar is gone and it's getting late. So I'm gonna leave that there, and as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.